Hello, Atlanta. Darren Kwilinski here in the ESPN Esports studio, and the Atlanta homestand is finally upon us, the second of 3 Overwatch League homestands. And in our moment of the week, brought to you by Omen by HP, we're going to welcome in Emily Rand from the West Coast. Emily, let's talk about the excitement or lack of when we talk about the Atlanta homestand. We have NYXL. If they go 2-0, they lock up that stage playoffs. We have Philadelphia going for a spot, but most of these teams don't really have much to play for. So tell us why we should get excited.
There's a lot of issues with this homestand, beginning with the fact that, as you kind of alluded to, both Florida and Toronto are actively rebuilding. They've made roster changes. They're trying to figure out kind of what their roster is even going to look like going forward. So there's that. There's the obvious, a lot of these teams do not have strong records. This is something that we actually might see more frequently out of block scheduling once geo-relocation goes through, because teams will have to kind of play each other in blocks at different times during the meta game. So it should be interesting. Again, it's an interesting test of geo-relocation, maybe not in the manner that they wanted it, because obviously the two teams here that you're really looking at are NYXL, as you mentioned, Shanghai Dragons, and then Philadelphia as well. If you want to kind of gauge where they're at in the standings, because they have been a bit inconsistent, you might want to be looking to see how well they do perform against some of these teams that have tougher records.
Absolutely. Philadelphia on the cusp of a playoff spot. If they have a good weekend, we'll see where they end up. Now, let's talk Atlanta Reign. The host team in Atlanta, winless this stage so far. How are they going to jazz this up? How are they going to get their home team fans hyped about anything?
I mean, I like Atlanta, so I feel badly because they started off this stage and we were like, they're not as bad as their records show because they've had a really tough, they've had a tough stage. They played some of those matches closely. And so it's just been a rough time for them. I think once you start losing, Atlanta has never been, and they themselves have said this, so I don't feel bad saying it, but, Atlanta, they really have always been very high and low in terms of mentality going into games. So they can have a lot of momentum and energy and excitement, and they can be an incredibly exciting team, but I do think consecutive losses have kind of worn them down. I think this team actually has a lot more talent than their record shows, though. So it would be nice to see them come out and take a few wins. As for how they're going to get fans excited, I think they're doing a bunch of fan-related content. I think Defran's coming back to face someone in a 1v1 or whatever. So hopefully that also gets the fans excited. I hope it goes off really smoothly. And I do, again, I want to stress that Atlanta as a team is better than their record this stage.
Absolutely. We can only hope that the next stage, they coalesce, come together, and prove your point. Now let's talk about the homestand format on a broader scale. As we were talking about, there's really only 2 strong teams at this homestand in the Shanghai Dragons and NYXL. Then you have a middle-of-the-road team with Philly, and then you got 5 teams that don't have anything to play for. Now, this does not really make for a very strong showing for the Overwatch League objectively when we look at what they're trying to accomplish and draw hype and make this exciting. So what in your mind can they do to make this a little bit better in the future?
I mean, I think, again, you're seeing a lot of stuff that will happen next year when you have to, do an entire tour. When Pacific Team, for example, has to do an entire tour of China, where they can only play a certain amount of teams because of the way that travel schedules work out, and trying to put the least amount of stress on players as possible. As for, the homestand, I think if you want to create hype and if you want to create excitement around this, one cool thing is that, for fans that might not have been able to make it out to LA to watch some of these teams, so not just Atlanta, but in Dallas, which I would say was a very successful event, we also saw a ton of Houston Outlaws fans who drove or came to watch the Outlaws as well because they were also at the homestand. I know it's difficult with Atlanta being an expansion team. They might not have as large of a fan base as other teams that were around in the inaugural season. However, I do think that it's that kind of like roadshow atmosphere, like bringing the show to you, that Atlanta really should lean into when looking at this homestand this week.
Absolutely. It's more of a East Coast dominance, who's the best on the East Coast sort of thing when you look at
Yeah,
it.
there you go. Like the Atlantic Division's been struggling a lot, but now you can really find out where your team is at.
Toronto. We got all those East Coast teams. They can battle it out for whoever's best on the East Coast. That's really what we got. Emily Rand, thank you so much for all that time and insight. And if you want more Overwatch League coverage, keep it locked right here on ESPN.com/esports.